Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I am Evan Irwin, and we're getting started as we do each and every week by introducing my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Arcanon Poros.
Oh, my God. And Ruben Bressler.
Shalom?
Yes.
Jeez.
It's Draenei. It means good fortune for all of our Warcraft friends out there.
Oh, mine was Hebrew for hello for all of our
And I'm just going to give it
friends out there.
the hey, y'all.
There it is.
What's going on, Witchins? Huh?
Witchins. Witchins is nice.
Oh, Witchins. Which one of yuns thought y'all was having a show? All right, so... Yeah, we're here. This is happening. So it's a little bit of a slow news week. You know, there's times in which we dive in and we have so many announcements, we have trouble keeping it to our show allotted time. And there's other times when you go, you know what? Yeah, there's not infinite happening this week in Magic. The first pick for this week, I feel, is that Seth Manfield is a robot from the future who will destroy us all. He has come back to destroy Sarah Connor and win every Magic tournament, literally every one of them. He won the Grand Prix at, where was it again?
Mordor. It was in Mordor.
No, he won the Costa Rica. He won the Costa Rican one. That
there was
only
an
500
active
slots.
volcano.
Yeah,
like within sight of it. So yeah, GP Mordor was won by Seth Manfield, the chosen one, and that is his sixth. And he is a robot sent from the future to win games of Magic.
Oh my God!
Wouldn't it be fabulous if you won the GP and then you found out that you were the one they were throwing in the volcano?
Oh my God!
This is a heater.
The gods only want the best.
Like I haven't seen since Brad Nelson. Since Brad Nelson's unbelievable, like rookie year on fire. There
have been a couple similar. It's tough to measure them against each other. You know, like Owen winning back-to-back GPs is obviously a huge deal. Brad obviously coming out of nowhere to just explode onto the scene.
Right.
Previous to Fabrizio's less than dignified exit, Fabrizio's entrance onto the GP circuit. There have been a lot over the years. I mean, Randy Buehler, honestly, when the Pro Tour was just starting up, cashed every event he ever played in for 6 months or something like that. So, but when you're on that list, that's a pretty impressive list. And so Seth Manfield somehow finding time to be the best Magic player in the world by, I'm going to say a wide margin at this time, until Owen wins this GP this weekend. But, the best Magic player in the world, and also just a dad in his spare time, I guess.
Just a dad.
I'm convinced I know the source of Seth's power. I think it's in the earring. See, where's that earring? I think if we just get rid of the earring,
right,
it's gonna all go away.
All of a sudden, he's just like dropping his cards. He doesn't know how to tap things.
It's gonna be. I got a reference for you. I'm gonna drop an old school reference. Do you guys remember the Power Rangers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the first or second season there was a villain named Madame Woe, and she was the Kabuki doll with like the big honkin' blue gem right here?
Sure.
And so they ripped the gem from her forehead and crushed it. Same thing. Just rip the gem, crush it, and all it goes.
Sure. And speaking of being a dad, and speaking of feeling old, my oldest child, Annie, turned 14 today.
Very nice.
Aww. Did you get her a gun?
What can you do at 14?
That's what we do.
She's had a gun.
Yeah, you get your gun.
That's right.
You're
right. She's had a gun for a decade already. That's you need to have that.
Right. Well, you get those in kindergarten around here. They just come straight equipped, y'all.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
To fend off gators and unruly Disney World guests.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. What's 14 mean? What's the?
You know what 14 means? Let me tell you something. This is actually really interesting with me. 14 is the first time in which my daughter has gotten off the phone with me. Love you, Dad. I gotta, see you. I'm gonna go, blah blah. That type of thing where they don't go, but they're going, and you have to get the hint. That was the first time. So now, because she had her friends there, and they were at the pool and they were playing and stuff, and it's like, yeah, all right, I see how it is.
All right, well, there's that.
She'll always be very tiny, and that's
and the cats
and
the silver. All right, that's enough of that.
God, oh my Lord.
You're welcome. But yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, man. So she's doing great, and that's awesome. And anyway, Seth Manfield
is a bit far off from that.
To bring it back to the actual robot overlords that are coming to take control. Guy is great. Seth is awesome. Super good at magic. Was in one of the most shark-infested waters ever, and that's the ocean at Costa Rica. But also in the tournament.
Yeah.
Some shark-infested water. I'm just kidding. But regardless, yes, seriously, this was only a 500-slot GP. Like, the pros there was just a sea of pros. And when somebody wins an event like that, you know that they are just, they're easily cementing themselves as one of the best Magic players. And with the heater he's on, I mean, my Lord. I just hope it doesn't, just sort of another lose to Shenhar round 3 and all. As you do.
He's incredibly sweet too. Like the few times I've seen him, he's been really nice. And I remember watching his the event at PAX. That was World Championships, was it? Which one was it? It was World Championships.
I believe so.
Okay, it was at PAX last year, and I was at PAX teaching people how to play Magic, and I was watching that game, and I remember how emotional he was when he won. Like he literally stood up and was like, he needed a minute. He was just like, he didn't know how to feel. And I love people who just sort of let that out. We've talked before about how there's sort of the stigma of like, you got to keep it all inside because we're all dudes here. And it's like, when Ari Lax got excited, it was a big to-do. And when people get upset, it's a big to-do. But this was the first time I saw somebody get really emotional and people let him have that. And I love when pros just let it out. And I was happy for him. And he's just a sweet guy. Like you can't not root for him. Like
absolutely. I wanted to mention that, we talked about a little bit about how Costa Rica doesn't get a ton of events, and that the two Costa Rican GPs, this one and the one that happened several years ago, were two of the biggest events that happened. And, it's not special for Costa Rica in particular, but it is worth noting that there is not a ton of a Costa Rican Magic scene. It's tough for them to get cards. It's tough for them to travel, It's in the middle of a rainforest, so it's kind of difficult to get to, and that's why they don't get a thing every a GP or a big event like that every year. But I did want to make mention, and I'm going to post the link in the chat here, that Miguel Gatica, who's probably the most well-known Costa Rican Magic player, wrote an open letter to the Magic community saying basically to the effect that, he can't really keep it going anymore. It's time for him to move on. And that's really unfortunate because he's he lists his credentials here and they're pretty impressive. He's a 5-time national champion. He's been on the national team 8 times. He does have 95 lifetime pro points when you talk about overall Magic. I mean, he's almost to that century mark. He's got a Pro Tour top 16 and all that good stuff. And he's just a super nice dude if you've ever had a chance to talk with Miguel. And so he's going to be toning back a little bit of his world traveling-ness. He used to be one of the buddies with Christian Calcano, for example, traveling the world, and so it's nice that he got to have a big send off like this, where everyone got to come down and see his country. But it's going to be sad to not have him around as much. So I wanted to shout out Miguel because he's just one of the, there are a lot of good guys, but he's one of the really good ones. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Miguel Gatica.
Absolutely. I mean, he makes a point here, just sort of for foreign Magic players, and quoting here, I think that basically the system in general is really messed up. I think for all the hours of traveling, testing, and playing, you receive so few benefits. The game is great, but I can see the big picture in which all the other games are getting so much better, and if WotC doesn't change anything, it's just better to move on to other games or poker so you can actually make a living out of it. So we kind of come back around to, that old chestnut of, if we could kind of work ourselves towards what esports has established, it feels like, just right now, the climate feels like to me that this Magic Digital Next, this thing that has been rumored and talked about and hinted at from Hasbro Corporate, is like, it's the green grass on the other side, and if we could just get there, then everything would be better. And they would be like, well, we already have Hearthstone that we could just literally copy and paste, and we'll take their horrible organized play, we'll make it better, and the rest of it we'll just copy it because it'll be a nice, streamlined, pretty version of Magic, and that'll just fix everything. But there are certain philosophies in the way that that Wizards is just has no interest in really star building, particularly at their Pro Tours. They've gotten better at it, but they really still feature the product, not the people.
Right.
And this is the kind, just sort of like another one of those, like, little rivets in the railroad.
Sure.
As you go down.
We could go a ton of different directions talking about GP Costa Rica.
Sure.
You know, and one of them is coverage. Certainly, something that one of the advantages Hearthstone has is that you can play Hearthstone from across the world. You know, there are major open tournaments where you can just play from your room against somebody else who's in the Ukraine playing from their room, and or from Costa Rica playing from their room. And Magic doesn't have that. Magic is, I mean, MTGO major tournaments aren't on the same scale as the Pro Tour, whereas some of these major tournaments are entirely online. Another direction that we could go in is we've talked about on the show before, spurned on by several of our folks in our viewing audience and our Patreon subscribers, that Magic overseas, man, it is just not. It's harder. Like, it's already difficult to get your hands on product, especially stuff like Eternal Masters, which is, you know, super high demand. It's even harder when you're even just in Europe or Japan. And from there, it just gets to be almost impossible when you're in South America, Costa Rica. We've talked a lot about the British Isles recently. And so, you know, there's a bunch of different directions that the spotlight could shine on here. But all in all, I would mention that I have not heard a single bad thing about GP Costa Rica. The event went smoothly. Everyone had a great time. Everybody loves Costa Rica. I would not be surprised if there's another GP Costa Rica in 3 years or 4 years when, you know, they have it's a function of the building. It's always going to be a 500 cap in that building, which is a beautiful venue. It's just tiny.
The pictures were really nice. Like, there were pros taking pictures. It seemed like there was some partying. Helen was taking pictures by the pool. She was like, you know, I am working hard in Costa Rica, and it's like, yeah, you are.
Well, that's what working hard in Costa Rica looks like.
Pretty much. But she's like lounging by the pool, and she's like, oh, it is another busy day in Costa Rica, and we're like, oh, Helen, like, we wish.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a gorgeous place. I mean, I think ultimately my sort of point is, at least what I kind of, some of what I take away is that if, you know, obviously if the benefits for pros were better, if the benefits for certain levels were better, or if the benefits for certain teams were better, and all that sort of rabbit hole we've been down, that he would not be writing this post. He would not be writing this post if those things were the case.
Or maybe he would. Like, maybe this is just I'm growing up, I'm not going to play games as much. You know, a lot of pros have gone through this and then come back to the game later. Kibler, Ben Stark, for example, Eric Froelich have gone through this where they left Magic for a little bit, pursued other things, then came back to Magic.
Sure.
And so it's possible that Miguel is going to, you know, and dozens and dozens of other people are going to, you know, spend their middle years developing a career, building a family, you know, doing other things, and then coming back to Magic later. Because as we all know, nobody ever really quits Magic.
No.
It's interesting that you say that, and Seth Manfield is doing all of this with a new baby, where we're like,
these guys. He's a robot.
I'm just saying, though.
True. No, you're right. And then there are people like Mike Sigrist, very similar situation. He's got twins. Who are still, you know, going 14-0 at GPs, but have kids and have families and are able to balance both. But that's not everybody, and one isn't better than the other, obviously. Sure. And so, you know, some people can balance it and some people can't, and that's fine. In Miguel's case, I don't know all the reasons for it, but certainly one of the major reasons is geography. And that's really unfortunate, as you were mentioning, Evan. You know, this might not be. He might be forced into this decision. Which, if the thing I'm talking about is people who aren't forced into the decision.
Right, of course. And that's
Miguel's being forced into the decision. This is really unfortunate.
Sure. So we're going to move on to Gather the Townsfolk. Now there was a question that was asked by Mr. Louis Scott Vargas, some guy you may have heard of him, maybe, but you know. He asked us about a Merfolk looter question. Basically, a situation where you have 6 tapped lands. You have a Merfolk looter who is untapped with the ability that says tap, draw a card, then choose and discard a card. Your opponent is at 12. You're at 9. Your opponent has a Sarah Angel. And in your hand, you have a Lightning Blast, which is a Tempest common that says it's a red and 3 generic mana for an instant that deals 4 damage to target creature or player. The question is, knowing the contents of your deck and what's left, including a control magic that's in your deck, out of, I think it's 25 cards, is that correct? 26
something
cards?
like that.
Out of those cards, you know that one of them is a control magic, and you know that there's a lot of blanks. You have at least 11 lands that you could sift through. But there's also some good cards. There's Shocks and Windrakes, Hill Giants and Phantom Warriors, and even Sifts that help you draw more cards. The question was, do you loot? Now, when you're in a situation where you are staring down an incredibly powerful threat, you have the ability to loot cards, but in your hand, the only card in your hand is basically, if not the perfect, one of the best answers to the threat that you're facing down. Now, as a Magic player, and as someone who has, I feel, at least a little bit, grown over the course of my experience in Magic, I have what I feel like are a lot of the same sort of feelings and situations that I go through when I was just starting. Like when I was back, and I would definitely describe myself as a very bad Magic player. The first thing that goes through my mind is, no, I'm never going to loot this. Are you crazy? Why would I loot this? I have the perfect answer in my hand. What is going on? Nothing makes sense anymore. Up is down, left is right. So, but the other, because if you're looting, now, so here's the thing, right? And here's the scenario. You're looting to try to find control magic. Control magic could turn this game around, could kill your opponent in 3 more turns after that. Is the card that really, really answers Sarah Angel, that actually gives you the game-winning position. It may take away your removal spell. Is that a favorable position? So me, certainly several years ago, and my first impression here, remains that first impression back then, and it's, this to me is the kind of sort of the outlook that you get these days, is that if I use Merfolk Looter and I draw control magic and I have to discard Lightning Blast, that feels horrible. What am I doing? If I had just waited and untapped and drawn the control magic, I would get the best of both worlds, and I wouldn't even be having this conversation. It would just be like, duh, you drew your control magic and you won the game with a Lightning Blast in hand the whole time, just in case something went wrong. So when you see those situations and you immediately go, what am I doing? Why would I ever loot that? And then you kind of go back and you look at it, and there was a really interesting video that Matt Sperling created, if you got a chance to see that this afternoon.
I've posted that in the comments there.
Yeah, where he has a video response where he kind of breaks it down in terms of playing cards. And he says, you're looking for the Ace of Spades, you have the King of Spades in your hand, but you have, 26 cards or whatever that could have the Ace of Spades somewhere in it. If the Ace of Spades at the end of the game is the top card of your deck, then you lose. Like then you missed out on an opportunity, because that was going to be the card that could win you the game all by itself. If it's the top card, it's okay because it's the most powerful thing you could be doing. It's the better card than one you had. You had the King of Spades, now you want the Ace of Spades. And if it's the second card down, obviously then you're doing fine because you got to it that much faster. So ultimately my take is I understand the heart where you look at it and you go, oh my God, I would never loot this in a million years. And then you go to the head and the head says, oh my God, have you ran the percentages, dude, for real? Because you have so much garbage in your deck and you have so many options that you could be looting through, that if you find control magic, you're going to win this game, and it's okay if you lose this 4 damage spell. All those kind of emotions run rampant. So Aaron, how do you feel about this scenario?
I wouldn't loot. No. So you have an answer in your hand. You're at 9. Just kill the damn angel. When you're looking at the remaining of the deck, that you have 1 copy of control magic. You have 25, 2, 4, 6, 10, 14. You have 25 other cards you could draw that are not what you're looking for.
Right.
If there were more copies of control magic, I would say give it a shot. But for me personally, I wouldn't do it. I'd just kill the damn thing. It's easy. You have it. If you didn't have the Lightning Blast, obviously I would say loot. But Lightning Blast is fine. Like and maybe I'm not at that level yet. Like that's, you talked about being at the levels, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like if somebody is not at the level where they understand that player, they would make that play. I don't think it makes them a bad person or bad player, but me personally, I wouldn't loot.
Ruben, break it down for us.
Yeah, obviously I'd loot. I think that it's not as obvious as a lot of people have been making it out to seem. The hard math suggests, if you watch Sperling's video, for example, he coldly dissects the whole situation where the worst case scenario is the control magic you're looking for is the top card of your deck. Now you have to choose between having either the best or the second best card in your deck. Whereas if it's anywhere beyond that, you can untap, have both options, or second, third, fourth, fifth, eventually finding the card twice as fast with the looter rather than, or even faster than that because you have sifts in your deck. I think that a lot of the discussion on this, and the reason why this really was a touchstone and why this really took off on social media is because this is a classic head versus heart scenario. You know what I mean? It's like the math is pretty well established that you should loot. If the worst case scenario is that your best card is on top of your deck, that's a pretty good worst case scenario. And every other situation eventually gets you closer to the control magic. That's the cold mathematical breakdown that we've seen from several folks on Twitter. Most specifically, I would suggest everybody check out Matt Sperling's because he is the furthest to the loot camp that I've seen. On the other hand, it feels real bad when you have to choose between the two best cards in your deck. And I think that the mental, the heartbreak outweighs the mental benefit of being able of the likelihood of having it on top of your deck for a lot of people. One of the best examples of that, I thought, was a really funny tweet from Aaron Forsyth, your community Super League compatriot there, who says, "Looting is correct. I don't think I've ever looted in such situations, and I'm unlikely to in the future. Preemptive congratulations to my opponents," which I thought was quite funny, and a pretty good breakdown of head versus heart. It really touched into something in the Magic community. This was just one of LSV's What's the Plays. It started out as just he does these a lot. What do you do here? And it went from just a sort of simple yes or no question to a real philosophical debate that drove a lot of people to create a lot of content based around it. Personally, I'm always looting for a number of reasons. One is I am a heartless bastard. Another reason is I drafted the darn looter. I mean, I want to use it. Merfolk looter's great. I want to be able. I'm not going to attack with it like Kibler. I linked Kibler's response, which was he would just attack with the Merfolk looter and be done with it.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean he was joking, obviously, but
right.
I think that personally, I'm going to always be looting there.
It's weird to me. So LSV wrote a follow-up article. LSV's play the looter problem as he's deemed it here, and the first thing he mentions is. The valid arguments against looting is you might be decked. That's a valid argument? You might be decked?
Sure. That was one of the arguments that came up. So, I mean, it depends on what your win conditions are. But if you look at the win conditions that are left in LSV's example deck here, it's not like that they're hard to answer problems. There's a couple of 2/2 flyers with your opponent at 16.
And unblockable 2/2s and stuff. Yeah.
Sure, things like that. So if your opponent has some amount of removal, it could, things like Lightning Bolt or Shock. It could be a contributing factor to that. You can't kill your opponent fast enough if you are looting every turn. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account that you could stop looting at some point.
Right.
This isn't Phyrexian Arena that's going to kill you, tick down and kill you.
Why is nobody addressing the fact that you might draw a crap card? He doesn't mention that in this, or it's what happens if you do this and you draw Phantom Warrior? Well, that feels terrible. What?
Well, but that's the thing.
A lot of the...
It feels terrible, but you're not looking for a mediocre
But you're not going to win the
creature.
game with a Phantom Warrior.
You're going to win the game with a control magic.
But that's...
See? Now our heart is arguing with your head.
No, right. Because you could very well not draw it, and then what happens if you don't draw it? You're putting all of it on the fact that you are going to see this card. You could very well draw the Windrake. You could draw the Shock. You could draw the Phantom Warrior.
Yep. And now, so let's say you don't loot, and we end up killing the Sarah Angel, and our opponent plays something else, and because we didn't loot, we're one kill spell away from killing the 2/2 that they followed up the Sarah Angel with. Now we go to 1. We draw an answer to the 2/2. Our opponent deals us a damage. We look at our top card. There's the control magic. There's the life gain spell. There's whatever it is. If I'd only looted at the end of that one turn, I would have been able to win this game. Right. And that's a heart argument for the head argument, right? That's you would feel worse about going with your heart if you looked at the top card of your deck after that, right? So there's a whole bunch of levels to this seemingly harmless question, which I think is great. And it just speaks to how Magic is the best game ever.
Magic is the best game ever. And so these types of things allow us to, just draw the lines. Just make the divides.
I will say
Kill the
that
damn thing. Like,
if it were rummaging, which is different, if it were rummaging goblin or mad prophet,
well, which is discard first.
You had to discard first and then draw. Obviously, we're never doing it.
Right.
But because you get the choice, I always just want more choices. That's all I ever want.
And I just want to kill things.
All I ever want is a legend that says whenever you would choose one or two, instead choose all. That's a legend I want them to print.
Oh, that'd be a sick artifact.
I'm great with that. It'd be like a 4/4 for 7. Whenever you have to choose a mode, instead choose all modes.
That's awesome.
Would be sweet. But in any case, that's neither here nor there. Because now we only have one choice, right? But we get to look at 2 cards rather than having to spin the wheel and hope something is on top of our deck.
So one of the newest decks in Standard, moving on just a little bit to the same guy with the Townsfolk, but one of the newest decks in Standard is Mono Blue Prison. Mono Blue Prison has shown up out of nowhere, was doing incredibly well this past weekend in Atlanta at the Open. I know it at least went 7-0. I don't know how it went after that because I unfortunately wasn't able to watch anymore or whatever, but still, this deck was doing great things. And
it's hilarious.
And it's amazing. It's 20 islands, 4 sunken hollows, 4 prism ring main.
Remind the folks what Prism Ring is.
Prism Ring is a 1 generic mana uncommon artifact from Magic Origins. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a color, and whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, you gain 1 life. And there was a point where the person who was playing it this past weekend played turn 1 Prism Ring, naming blue, and turn 2 Prism Rings, naming blue and blue.
That doesn't sound like a good hand.
And he beat the living snot out of his opponent because everything he did gained him 3 life. And after a while, you have just so many card drawing spells, and you have Jace's Sanctum, which is a blue and 3 generic mana rare Magic Origins enchantment that says instant and sorcery spells you cast costs 1 generic mana less, which just kind of breaks it wide open. And when you have a couple of these out, basically Pour Over the Pages is free. So you can just draw 3 and untap 2 lands and you're good. So that's great. And it's, then you discard a card, and it's unbelievable. So, he was just destroying people. He was using Days Undoing to make sure he still had all of his pieces. Engulf the Shore to return all the creatures to their owner's hand. Rise of the Tides, which is weird because it kind of fights Days Undoing, but whatever. Rise of the Tides, you remember this? Shadows over Innistrad uncommon is a blue and 5 generic mana uncommon sorcery. Put a 2/2 black zombie creature onto the battlefield tapped for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So often he was just playing all of these cantrips, all of these blue spells, gaining all this life from Prism Ring, and finally he'd be like, okay, Rise from the Tides with 10 zombies and then kill you.
Yep.
It was ridiculous.
Frank Karsten placed 15th at Grand Prix Costa Rica. Luckily he didn't win, because engulfing the shore in Costa Rica would not turn out well. But LSV had been streaming this deck a bunch recently. Do we have the O2 drop graphic up for this one? Because this is the deck you shouldn't be playing this week.
No, you should play this. This is so hilarious.
This deck is awesome.
Yes, hilarious. Head and heart. No,
Ruben.
Okay, all right. This is a deck that I would bring to FNM. I would not. This is a Jace's Sanctum deck, by the way. If you're playing this deck, Jace's Sanctum is the most important card. Your deck sort of just doesn't really. It just spins its wheels a lot. It draws a bunch of cards and bounces a lot of creatures, and then draws a bunch of cards and bounces a lot of creatures, and then you still just lose. Because you can't take advantage of the extra mana and extra scry coming off of the Jace's Sanctum. This deck looks sweet. 15-year-old Ruben would have loved this deck. But I'm older. I'm more mature now.
Look, Martin Mueller.
I have all 5 basic mana types up on my wall at home because I don't hold grudges against different colors.
Okay.
Wow. He puts bacon directly onto the cheeseburger.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't care how I feel about it. It's just the right thing to do.
It is. And so Martin Mueller, and I was just reading kind of the bit here from the article. First of all,
it's actually Martin Mueller.
Martin
Muller, yeah.
Muller. I'm sorry, Muller. Martin Muller.
I call him the Danish Bieber because he kind of looks like Bieber. But
fair enough. But Martin Muller, he went 12-3 at Grand Prix Manchester with his deck, and that's where it kind of broke out. And I recall him talking about it, saying that basically the Grand Prix was just like sort of kind of a lark, and he did it because he was just having fun. And if he was really playing to really win the Grand Prix, he'd be playing green white tokens. But he was like, I built this thing, it's hilarious, whatever. And then he gave it to Frank Carson, apparently like the actual physical deck. Like, here, Frank. And Frank just took it to the 11-3-1 record. That's amazing.
Yeah, deck is capable of super powerful things when nobody knows what the hell is going on. Wow. Engulf the Shore is a real card, especially with all these weird, tireless tracker manland decks running around.
Yeah,
bouncing. Just value mid-range creatures aren't good facing down. Bounce them to your hands.
Yeah, and he's taken multiple turns with Part the Water Veil. He's awakening it so he can get a huge creature that'll help him win the game. The Rise of the Tides helps him win the game. The sideboard has some hilarious stuff. Has 4 Thing in the Ice, so you can start, just grinding.
You need to
them
bounce
out.
more things.
Yeah, clearly, and just stuff like negates and Dragonlord Slumber.
Guardian of Tazim.
Guardian of Tazim.
Let
me remind you.
Get your Sphinx on with that guy.
Is a 2 blue, 3 generic mana, 4/5 rare flyer from Battle for Zendikar. It has landfall whenever you land enters the battlefield under your control. Tap target creature and opponent controls. If that land was an island that you played, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So it's basically a big wall that taps down dudes because all you want is more walls to tap down dudes.
Well, and also it's a win condition. It flies.
And it flies. It kicks booty.
Sure.
It's a really weird deck. It's just one of those awesome decks that came out of nowhere. I love these types of things. I want them to show up all the time.
I'm super happy that it did well. I think that it's great when you can take a deck that uses none of the cards anybody else is using at all, show up and just kind of crush a tournament.
That's amazing.
I think that it's great that Martin and Frank have figured out this whole little hole in the metagame that they can weave their way into, and I'm super happy that this deck did well.
It kind of reminds me of Constellation a little bit, like just with like the early, the Prism Ring is kind of taking the place of Herald of the Pantheon, and you're kind of getting this nice little cushion in place, and then you start stalling. So like whereas Constellation used to use Silk Wraps and suppression fields and things like that, you're doing that with like your Hydra Lash and your whatever, and then eventually you just get to the point where you stalled enough. You have this cushioning, and then you kind of do your game plan. And I love this. And I love this also because I don't like the standard format.
Right.
So this is entirely a deck that I would play and be like, all right, you bums want to play green-white tokens, and you bums want to do this.
This deck is a metagame scalpel. This deck
I
is
would
designed
completely
to
play this.
Take down green-white tokens, the new Bant Humans decks, and the mono-white Humans decks. And because there's like no ramp, there's no like dragons anymore, there's no control deck really that isn't black-green, seasons past kind of mid-range stuff that this deck can also feast upon. All of these cards are specifically like tokens are so bad against this deck.
Yeah.
Lambholt Pacifist is a joke against this deck. Collected Company's pretty awful against this deck. That deck full of 2-for-1s? Well, guess what? None of them matter. None of you have closing speed because no one plays red cards anymore. Right. This deck is really targeted and does a really good job of punishing an inbred metagame.
This deck,
and it's also inexpensive to build. I mean, like there's Jace in the sideboard. I mean, there's Jace in the sideboard, and did you know that Jace is down to $40 now?
Wow.
Jace has plummeted. Thing in the Ice is down to what, 8? 7 or 8. This is affordable too. Like if you still are having problems getting into standard, you could very well take this. You could probably do without the Jaces because there's only 2 in the board. Right. And this isn't bad.
You gotta hurry to buy up the deck though, because I'm sure all the everybody's buying all their Jace's Sanctums offline right now.
Speaking of decks, did you see that MTG Goldfish, they took Abzan Pact for a ride the other day, or was it Esper Pact in standard? Starfield and Esper Starfield of Nyx. Yeah. My heart. And it was fun watching Saffron lose to his own pact.
Oh my god.
Sorry, Saffron. It was great. But...
Right. Clearly.
I would rather lose to my own pact. See, that's a heart thing. I would rather lose to my own pact than be dealt.
Is your heart the one that picked out that outfit you're wearing right now?
Wow.
Look, man. The state of Oregon picked out the outfit that I'm wearing right now.
I like it though. It's very lumberjack. I'm into it.
Oh, I didn't get the I like it though. Was coming out of that one. Did your mama pick you out that outfit?
All
that what
the
happened?
chat all night has been, ooh, Aaron looks good. Aaron looks great. What's with Ruben's beard? What's with Ruben's plaid?
What in the hell did Ruben do to his face? I'm
Whatever.
unaware. All I'm saying is this mono blue prison deck is the deck that gives all brewers like that dream.
Yes.
Like this is the reason that those brewers are like, you know what? I'm going to make these really weird, janky rares work because by God, Martin Muller and Frank Carson did it. I can do it too. And by God, you can. You know.
Sure.
Believe in the thing.
Brews have won Pro Tours before, man.
That's right. So you can make it happen. However, what we are going to make happen right now, 36 minutes in, sir, is the red zone. We are in the red zone, and this week we're throwing down. We're throwing down on a question that I didn't even feel was a question.
Yep.
Ruben, you want to explain what the red zone consists of?
All right. I'm going to start a fight that didn't need starting. So I think that now I've come out in favor of certain cards going off of various banned lists in the past. On In Contention, which was a podcast I used to do with Sam Stoddard and Matt Kranstuber and then Joey Pasco, I argued, for example, for land tax to come off of the banned list, and lo and behold, it eventually did, and it has not ruined Legacy. I've also said for some pretty unreasonable cards to come off of banned lists, Earthcraft being the biggest one that I think that could. Yeah, Uncraft, Unbanned, and Legacy, I've suggested in the past. I would still like to see it, just for curiosity's sake, but we'll leave it there for now. Mind Twist in the past in Legacy, I said could come off banned lists. Look, man, I don't think it's that powerful.
Wow.
I don't think it's unreasonable. So wait, hold on. I got a big one because I know you guys are gonna hate this.
Right.
I think that Survival of the Fittest can come off of the Legacy banned list.
You are crazy. You are
Let that
insane.
sink in. Let that sink in. Let that simmer. Let that bore a hole in your brain. Here's my reasoning. So, the reason why Survival was banned is because of Grand Prix Columbus number 2 or 3, which was eventually won by Tomohiro Saito. This happened in like 2010, I'm going to say. And Saito won with Merfolk Splashing Black for hits like Perish, for example.
Wow.
And, you know, there are some weird decks that don't exist in Legacy anymore. Tom Martell with 4-color counterbalance that also had, like, Punishing Fire, Grove of the Burnwillows in it. Brad Nelson made top 9 and then top 8. Hashtag Westco check, if you know that story. He played a Knight of the Reliquary Mox Diamond mix-up that wasn't even New Horizons. It was a really weird one. Bryant Cook, as he does, top 8'd with Storm, etc., etc. And Caleb Durward top 8'd with Survival of the Fittest, which other people had built other Survival of the Fittest decks, most notably Patrick Chapin, had like a combo variant with Loyal Retainers and Iona, which I'm not going to explain the direct interaction with that and Emrakul and all those kind of stuff. But anyway, the reason why it was banned is because Survival is an engine card in and of itself.
Yeah.
That can function as either an aggro card or a mid-range card or a combo card or kind of a control card, depending on the build of the deck. And the reason why it was banned originally is because they were afraid that it was going to take over the format, not that it took over the format.
What are you talking about? There were plenty of results from SCG events back then that were ridiculous. It just got worse and worse. It didn't get better. It just got to be like, oh, well, here's this weird combo Vengevine thing. And here's the weird aggro thing. Here's this weird control thing.
Whoa. Did you say Vengevine?
Yes, Vengevine.
I'm listening.
See, now we got Aaron on the case.
Oh, God.
I was like, is this going to be something else I don't care about? And then I heard, Vengevine.
Getting to Basking Root Walls, bring back your Vengevines, attack you with like... All right.
Wait, what do you win with?
Whoa.
Vengevines and Basking Root Walla?
Yeah.
Can I use anything else, or do I have to use the Root Wallas?
I mean, Root Walla helps the comp, like one of, and then you can play like any 1-mana green creature, like Noble Hierarch or whatever, to bring back 2 Vengevines.
Right.
It's a graveyard deck.
Okay, so there's not actually any dredging happening?
You can play anything in a Survival of the Fittest deck that's a creature, because you search your library for any creature, right? It's great. So anyway, let me get to the crux of my argument. Here's a list of cards that were not legal when Grand Prix Columbus occurred. All right? Abrupt Decay, Grafdigger's Cage, Surgical Extraction, Deathrite Shaman, Rest in Peace, Terminus, and Scavenging Ooze. These cards would have kept, and these are all cards except for Surgical Extraction, which sees played in sideboard. All those cards, and Grafdigger's Cage, I guess, also sees played in sideboard. All those other cards see main deck play in popular Legacy decks right now.
Sadly.
So
there are lots of ways.
There are answers
combat,
to threats.
Survival of the Fittest. Wait, I'm not done. There are also different threats. So other cards that were not legal or not printed yet are Gristlebrand and Omniscience. At this Grand Prix, you could trade away a Stoneforge Mystic to get a Show and Tell. Like, just straight up. That's how bad Show and Tell was at the time. So nowadays, you have these giant spaghetti monsters and demons that are, Yawgmoth's bargains on a stick, and you can play those. Those are engines in and of itself, but you can't play Survival of the Fittest. The other thing is that Survival of the Fittest is inherently a turn 3-4 deck, right? So you're going to have some lands in play. It's not like we're going off on turn 1 or turn 2. You have a little bit of interaction with the Survival of the Fittest player. What the Survival of the Fittest player needs to win the game, really, is have Survival in play and 4 green mana. That's a lot of green mana to have in play, right? Show and Tell at least has the benefit of being able to be removed to Force of Will. You can't do much with an extra Survival of the Fittest. So another card that wasn't around was Batterskull. Stoneforge Mystic decks were a lot better. So if you remember back in Standard, Batterskull was the main way you fought against Vengevine. And why Vengevine was never tier 1 after Batterskull came out was because Batterskull just shut all these Vengevine decks out of the format in Standard. So why not just bring your natural Predator, Stoneforge Mystic and Batterskull, back into the format to combat these Survival of the Fittest decks? I think that another big one would be, it's not huge anymore, but unbanning of Metalworker happened between now and then, which allows Wormcoil Engine to exist, which is like a bigger Batterskull. So there's a lot of reasons why Survival won't be as dominant now as it was then. Another thing, the main reason why I want Survival unbanned is because there is not a true aggro deck in the format. And I think that you can actually make a true Survival of the Fittest aggro deck. Eldrazi has like control elements. I guess that's the closest we're going to ever have to having like wild Nakados in Legacy ever again. But I think that's, there's so many other reasons why Survival would be fine. Elves kills faster now because you have Craterhoof Behemoth. You're not just sitting there waiting for a turn with your Progenitus or your Regal Force. Snapcaster Mage exists now. And so you're able to flash back answers to whatever you Survival up. More reliably. You have multiple copies of Bolt and Swords to Plowshares. Delver of Secrets is a card now. So Canadian Threshold, which was a deck that really kept the Survival decks in check a lot of the time, is more powerful than it used to be. And so a lot of these natural predators got better, and a lot of the things that people would do instead of play Survival got better. And I don't think that it would be that unreasonable to have Survival of the Fittest be unbanned in Legacy.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Let's not ever do that again. Survival of the Fittest turned into... Now, look, you're not wrong that, look, we are looking through a lens that is 6 years old. Survival of the Fittest was banned December 2010. So, 5.5 years, whatever. But, like, it's been a while. That's no doubt about it. But Survival of the Fittest began to slowly creep up everywhere. There were Vengevine interactions. A lot of people said, why don't you just ban Vengevine? It's like, well, because you're banning the gasoline, you're not banning the engine. Combo decks consisted of Necrotic Ooze, if you remember that weirdo card. From which I'm finding right now, Ooze Survival. Necrotic Ooze is a rare from Scars of Mirrodin. It's a 2 black, 2 generic mana, 4/3 Ooze. As long as it's on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all creature cards in every graveyard.
Right,
so,
and that was the main combo kill with a weirdo card from way back called Phyrexian Devourer.
Correct.
And you put Triskelion and Phyrexian Devourer in your graveyard with Ooze in play, and you could machine gun your opponent. Basically, is how the combo works.
Now that sounds like fun.
Right, but here's the thing about that combo. You can disrupt it with Graveyard Hate. You can disrupt it by destroying the Scavenging Ooze, or not the Scavenging Ooze, the Survival of the Fittest, and you can disrupt it by getting the Survival out of the hand, or interact by getting the Survival off of the stack. So all 4 major ways of interacting work.
It's an incredibly powerful, what could arguably be called broken, certainly at the time, tutor and engine all by itself. So the question with all these...
How much more broken is that than Show and Tell Gristlebrand? How much more?
I don't know.
Any?
And I don't... Well, here's the thing, man. Like, it just feels like, you're on one hand, you got two hands. Okay, look, I can see sides of the debate. All right, I'm a dude who sees all the sides. Your side is clear that things have changed in 5.5 years, whether it's technology, whether it's decks, whether it's new cards. Understandable. The other side of it is why we've already seen what ridiculous things it can do in multiple different archetypes with multiple shells inside of it, and there was still hate back then. It's not like no one had things that didn't destroy Survival of the Fittest or didn't get rid of graveyards.
Nothing like Abrupt Decay. Nothing like Grafdigger's Cage. Nothing that efficient, that widely played.
We arguably could use better hate cards, yes, and they just didn't get there more or less in time. But regardless, do you want to risk the possibility of creating a broken format when you already saw what it could do 5.5 years ago? Imagine what it can do with all of the new tools it has. You focus so much on the answers.
Sure.
We haven't looked that much on the threats, and I didn't spend a lot of time about it because I'm like, my God, if you give yourself like the best creature tutor of all time, it ain't going to take long to bust that thing.
Exactly, and that's the Birthing Pod problem, which is why they had to ban Birthing Pod, which is eventually, I mean, it's already good, but it's only going to keep getting better and better and better and better as more of these great creatures get printed, as Magic moves to being towards more of a creature-centric game rather than a stack game or a hand game like it was in the early days of Magic. I get that argument. That's a good argument, and that's like probably the best argument for keeping Survival of the Fittest on the ban list, is what even in the future could come, regardless of what we've printed already. But speaking of what we've printed already, let's talk about them, because I did the research. What are you slotting in that's been printed in the last 5 years into specifically a Survival of the Fittest deck? Do you want like prized amalgams? I mean, obviously something like Deathrite Shaman is great, but all decks are running Deathrite Shaman.
Shaman,
Deathrite Shaman. I think that, there's a lot of there's a couple things that you can slot in, but it's not like there's anything overtly broken that's been printed in the last 5 years specifically for Survival.
It's not about well, first of all, maybe there is. We just aren't thinking about it. We're talking about thousands of cards that have been printed from then till now, and what I'm saying, and we haven't looked at all the interactions of the new cards plus the old cards plus Survival and what it could do. It's not so much that I wanted to come into the debate saying that, like, this is the broken things that will happen if you unban it. What I'm saying is, as much as you focus on what stops it, I'm saying that there is just as much fuel to that fire, that if Gristlebrand wasn't around when Survival exists, imagine just Gristlebrand, what you can do when you can go get it and do something with it. Whether it's put Survival in Show and Tell because you can tutor up whatever at instant speed. I mean, who knows what they would do with it? I don't know.
I put this argument to you. If Gristlebrand were in Worldwake and Vengevine were in Avacyn Restored, if they were just switched and they were different sets, Survival would not be banned. Show and Tell would be banned.
Maybe. I mean, obviously,
I think it's 100%. I think that the reason why Survival is banned is because Vengevine existed. I don't think that there's much that could have been. If Vengevine weren't a card, Survival would not have been, because Survival existed before. It's not like it was printed in Exodus. It was printed in 1999. You had 10 years to come up with a Survival deck in Legacy, and there were fringe Survival decks, but no one did anything until the card Vengevine. And there are some other more recent broken things you can Survival up a Stoneforge Mystic and have a Stoneforge package in your Survival deck. That's pretty scary too, but that's another mid-range deck. That's another turn 4, turn 5 kind of deck. So I think that it's possible. I'm just making the argument that it's not completely and utterly unreasonable.
Here's the way that I would imagine that I can kind of put it into perspective. You ever seen Back to the Future Part 3?
Sure.
When they Aaron, don't make the face. Not at Back to the Future.
I just saw the first one last year.
Face at the
now, if I had said 2, face is okay. 3, face not okay. All right, anyway, Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm going to go ahead and spoil the ending of it, at least most of it, because if you haven't watched it, for God's sakes, get some culture. So Back to the Future Part 3 ends with them building a time machine out of a train. Okay? And the key to this train is they put in these like capsules of like super fuel that Doc Brown comes up with. Okay, so the first one's like boom, and they go up to like 40 miles an hour. The second one's like boom, and they go up to like 60 miles an hour, and the last one gets you to 88. That last one is Vengevine. That's what happened. That train is survival of the fittest, and when they gave you that third nitro boost, everything went crazy and you went into the future and you destroyed everything and everyone because it was unbelievably good. So yes, it was the straw. It was the fuel. It's what actually drove the engine to be broken. But
the argument against that is that it's not like any other deck isn't getting new tools. Like Counterbalance was a deck before Miracles.
Sure.
But then Terminus got printed and boy howdy, now we're the best deck in the format, right?
Best deck, but good deck.
Storm's been around forever, but
Sure.
they just got, Dark Petition, and now
Ruben,
they're better than before.
I get that you want survival of the fittest to come back. I get that, but you're wrong, and I hate you. I can't believe that you would recommend something. So you say you want this deck to come back, and then at the same time you mention the tools to fight this deck. Splash damage, which affects Dredge, which affects me. Why would you want to play a deck that hurts me in the interim? Like, I don't want to see Grafdigger's Cages. I don't want to see more surgical extractions. I don't want to see more of these things. Like, why? Why would you do
back at sideboards from GP Columbus, and you're not going to be happy. There were so many relics of Progenitus and Tormod's Crypt.
But see, I can play around those, though.
Over the place.
On the hierarchy of graveyard hate, we don't mind those. I'm happy to say I would rather deal with a Nile Spellbomb than with a Rest in Peace any day of the week. But
I mean, they were playing Leyline of the Void. Leyline's a tough one.
All I'm saying is, back in the day, there were absolutely very much targeted answers. There were multiple things that could help disrupt the combo when it was in place or when it was happening. But just as much as they've gotten better answers, I think they've gotten better fuel. And maybe some of that fuel is the nitro boost that gets you into the future. And maybe some of it's just really good and some great player in the metagame, and you're 100% right and it breaks nothing. But every once in a while, I think they make that bet. They go like, World Gorger Dragon. And then they go, please don't hurt me.
Don't say that around me.
We don't talk about World Gorger Dragon.
We don't talk about that card here.
Why?
Because that's a trigger warning that Wedge gave the girlfriend bracket on the community.
Hello, he killed us on turn 2.
And then it was printed at EMA, and then it's not good. So we're gonna back away from World Gorger Dragon combo. I apologize for bringing that up, but I think that I honestly. So all of my arguments thus far have been brain related. Now I'm going to make my heart related argument.
Oh, here we go.
Survival of the fittest is so much fun, Evan. Have you ever had a survival in play? It is a hoot, nanny. Boy, howdy.
Wow.
It is great. So it's so much fun to just have your entire toolbox of like when I first started playing when I was like 12. I had a survival of the fittest deck that had Sneak Attack in it, and also had Oath of Ghouls to rebuy all of my creatures that I searched for. Nice. And I would pay a green mana and discard a Bird of Paradise and go get an Avalanche Rider, and then pay 1 red mana to play an Avalanche Rider. Man, that was great magic. And that was fun. Survival of the Fittest is a fun card.
I get that.
It is significantly more fun than Counterbalance.
But you're wrong. And I hate you.
Yeah? Am I? Am I though? Yeah. Am I wrong?
I mean, it could be the most knee-slappingest, hoe-downingest, card that y'all ever saw. But in the real world, the crap's broken, bruh. All right, so we will agree to disagree, but you're still wrong, and
Yeah, we'll agree that we hate Ruben.
We're going to move on to a blast from the past. This past week, our own Brian David Marshall, our own Pro Tour historian, took a trip down memory lane back to the Dojo. And back when the Dojo was a thing and news groups were just getting going, we're talking about the late 90s, I just never knew that the Dojo existed. The only experience I've ever had with the Dojo is looking at like archive.org. Even when I started to get back into Magic around the mid-2000s, by then it was long gone. It had been gone for years. And so just based on your experience, Ruben, which I think you've had, a little bit more than both myself and Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about the dojo, why it's important, why he spent a very long, sort of article going through bits and pieces of it with Frank Kusamoto, Zvi Mauschwitz, Michael Flores, Rob Hahn, and others as they've kind of, just kind of put their spin on what the dojo did and why it was important.
Right. So if you read Magic content, if you watch Magic content, if you watch this show, basically everything evolved out of what the dojo started. I think that, so the dojo was really the first place where all of the lessons learned from various games of Magic could be assembled in one place and read about. It was the first Magic website. Just only Magic. There were Usenet groups, and there were message boards, and there were chat conversations, but there was no public place for all of the information from Magic at the time. And the dojo did that. And a lot of the terminology we use to this day is because of things that were invented on the dojo. Frank Kusamoto, who was a naval intelligence person, a lot of the terminology we use to this day, phrases like aggro, tournament report. Because he worked in naval intelligence, he would receive reports, and that's why the phrase tournament report exists. We talk about Magic and tempo and advantage in the way that people talk about martial arts. Or at least at the very beginning, it was very similar to martial arts, and that's why the site was called the dojo. And Frank Kusamoto and Rob Hahn were two of the originators of getting all that information together. If you're watching the show and you hate it when people net deck, guess what? There wasn't net decking before the dojo. They would just post deck lists with no commentary. No, this deck was good. There's no this deck is good and here's why. Here's what you should change about the sideboard. No, just lists of cards and tournament and finish. That was it. It not only was it the first Magic website, it was also the first Magic sort of social media, really. It was a status symbol to get your name on the dojo. Randy Buehler talks a lot about how, early days of him playing, he wanted to win tournaments, but he really wanted to get his name up on the dojo. And this whole article talks about the whole history and evolution of what the dojo became. It became gigantic, to the point where it got bought by the USA Network for some untold number of millions of dollars during the .com boom of the when was that? Early 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, early 2000s. And then the .com boom went away and didn't really work out. And part of that was that the USA Network had to lay off basically everyone that ever. The entire dojo project, and that never went anywhere from there, allowing the rise of your Star City Games, your Channel Fireballs, what have you. But without that, certainly the dojo would still be existing. It was a popular and profitable business model up until it was sold. And so, this place was the birthplace of seeing Randy Buehler's name in print. It was why we know who Zvi Mauschwitz is. There's a lot of great stories associated with the dojo.
Sure. So here's one I'll just cherry pick to share with our viewers and or listeners. So Frank Kusamoto mentions that when Justin Gary won Nationals, he went to talk to him about 3 rounds before he won it, and he asked him if he read the dojo, and he said, "Oh yeah, man, I read it every day." And and then Frank said, "Hey, it'd be great if you could write a tournament report for us." And so he was 16 years old at the time. Justin Gary, this is the guy who's in charge of Gary Games, now Stoneblade Entertainment, who's made the Ascension deck building game, amongst other amazing, good, cool, super cool stuff. And he was 16 years old. He was really anxious about it. He said, "Don't worry about it. If it needs editing, we'll take care of it." He ended up winning and writing a great article. He wrote him an email about 10 years ago thanking him for doing that. Justin thanking him because it sparked his whole interest in analysis and thinking about games in a different way. And he said it basically led to his career in working with games. The dojo is just full of these types of stories. It just makes me sad because like back in the late 90s, I made my little Magic fan website on my little like internet service provider, 5 megs of storage or whatever they gave you back in the day. And like I was writing my first HTML.
GeoCities.
It was just a step up from GeoCities. You know what? Because I was using my internet service providers.
AngelFire?
Yeah.
No. This was like US
This
Internet or whatever.
So for the Dojo, it was netcom.net.
Yeah. And
Jesus.
For me, I had a little tiny site, and it had I had inverted, for example, and I don't know why I always remember this, but I remember this. I had inverted the Magic logo. You know what I mean? Like when you go to something for color and you invert the color and it looks like weird and gray and purple and all. Instead of its normal colors, it's totally backwards. I had inverted the Magic logo because that was cool, and I put it on my website as the Magic logo because I was just convinced that was the coolest thing ever. So, but while I had found a few of the news groups, I didn't really care about it because we had a local metagame, we had a local shop. Had all my friends there. Man, we were reading Inquest magazine. We didn't need no silly interwebs. Inquest was telling us everything we needed to know. So there was certainly a feeling that your local shop and your local metagame is correct, and if you're good locally, then you're good at Magic. Period. Don't worry about the outside world. Put them blinders on, nice and tight. And don't worry about anything else. And so it's really cool to see, this type of look back into what happened and how Magic got from there to here. If the dojo didn't exist, I agree with you, Ruben. We would not be here. We would not be doing what we're doing.
It would certainly be a lot different.
I have to say, I was particularly affected by the closing remarks by Zvi, and he made a couple of comments which I found not necessarily shady, but just very. I related a lot to them. So he kind of wrote this kind of closing about what happened to the site. And he says that, he says, because people didn't have this ethos of I'm giving you content and I should be paid for it, everyone came to the dojo and considered it an honor just to be there. We got the best of both worlds for a while, and then that stopped happening. Was it ever going to be commercially viable? Probably not, but a lot of things that are worth having are not commercially viable. You can have a patron like Frank who cares enough. And, he also talks about how, after a while, the site kind of turned into, he says it became a website and a business like any other. After a while, these sites are like, what sets MTG Card Market apart from Nerd Rage, which is different than MTG Card Market? They just start, which is different than MTG Mint Card. There's just, I'm really not trying to be shady here, but after a while, there's no soul anymore. It's literally just deck lists and articles and people collecting a paycheck, collecting that money that they need just to keep them going and between GPs. And, he makes it sound like this harkens back to a day where people did it because they love to do it. And maybe they got a couple dollars for it. And because of that, that affected the tone of the site and how maybe some of these sites nowadays are literally just businesses. It's just a storefront with a couple blog posts attached. And that sucks. Right, and reading that paragraph made me kind of want to be back in that day where it really was just about people who, like you said, Randy just wanted to see his name on the dojo, and we really don't have that anymore. People are in it for, can I get paid now? And don't get me wrong, I love money too, but it's like, it was just a different time, and I just can't help but wonder what the content was like and how it was better than it was now.
Yeah, it's better when people don't get paid. But by the way, visit our Patreon page.
Oh.
Funny. Because we're definitely not sellouts.
Right. We're
How do you think I paid for this hair? Come on now. We're getting
doing it for the love. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Right, Evan?
We're loving it. Buy some stickers. All right.
It's a reminder of a simpler time.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to go back and read this article because boy is it a treat. And also, if you can find the old articles in old archived articles
you can find anything, it on archive.org. You can go
anything that Brian Hacker has ever written. People don't even know who Brian Hacker is anymore. I referenced him vaguely when we were talking about some issue like a month ago.
Right.
Anything early Zv stuff. Why Mike Flores is Mike Flores. All of it is great.
All of it, specifically, I think, Mike. Now, Brian Hacker and Mike, they had very much sort of like a stream of consciousness, a putting you in the moment, a painting a picture, giving you the idea of the culture and the feeling and the thought that's going on behind it. And, it's really interesting how you kind of look at what Magic used to be back then. And these days, I don't want to boil it down just like they're doing it just for the money. I mean, clearly, while it's great, you want to get paid for your efforts and your work, and it reminds me a lot of what I would describe even as YouTube back in the day. I got, I mean, if you broke down the amount that I got paid for my magic shows when I first began them, like pennies on the hour, basically, in terms of what I was making. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so there was that one point where YouTube added ad revenue when basically, like, one day I loaded up YouTube and it had a little checkbox. It's like, would you like Google to send you money? And I'm like, okay. And then they started sending me money, and it was like, oh my God. And then all these people were just like, that's not okay. You're not supposed to get money sent to you from Google. And you're like, you know what? This kind of inspires me to do more. And yeah, you can call it a sellout, but at the same time, it's, it helps justify the work that you do. And as you get, bigger, more famous, better, better known, bringing in people, bringing in readers, people get excited to read you and even pay to read you. Part of that is because you have an acumen at this. And, not every pro Magic player can write, but the ones who can and can do it really well can certainly benefit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also interesting to look that nowadays, basically every Magic website that has content is also a secondary retailer. And the Dojo wasn't that. There was no store attached to the Dojo. The only one I can even think of off the top of my head that doesn't have a store attached to it is New. That's the only one that I can think of, and there are dozens of great stores, great Newmont Gaming, the one that Kenji Egashira operates, doesn't have a store associated with it. But there, and that doesn't mean that it's any better or any worse. I'm just saying that it's a completely different time now. And so I've taken this trip down memory lane. All these articles by BDM where he looked at the early days of the Pro Tour, the early days of the Dojo. I just loved every single second of it.
Yeah, and I think it's great because this is one of those things that I know it sounds a little weird, but like if we don't work on saving this stuff, it's just going to go away forever. And you're never going to have these stories told. And maybe no one had interviewed Frank about what happened on the Dojo and how he got it started and so on and so forth. Like those are things, and those are the reasons that part of the reason why I enjoy making history projects anyway is so you can look back. There was some amazing history that I actually just stumbled on where I think this girl's name is Geek Girl 19. She does these unbelievably, like an hour-long in-depth about X-Men, about what happened during the 60s era X-Men up to like the mid-70s. And she made a second episode all about the Phoenix Saga and how it was amazing. And it wasn't just this crap they did in the third X-Men movie, which was just garbage. And she's about to release her third one, which is going over, I think, the 80s and 90s X-Men, which I think is amazing. But regardless, let's move on here quickly because we're starting to run out of time, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, huh? So
impressive.
We're gonna go to.
We're some real windbags, is what we are.
We sure are. We make the words and the mouths move. With splash damage. Hey, don't give me that. Hey, I don't need tree chopping. I don't need it. You think I need it? I don't need it. All right, there we are. Now, there's a website that I know of because I've been working at Cool Stuff Inc., so I've been paying a lot more attention to the board game industry, and I'm going to bring it up here. So Dice Tower News is a news website for board game news and updates and things. And one of the things that was really interesting that came up just the other day was court rules that mechanics in a game are unable to be copyrighted. I'm going to read that one more time. Court rules that mechanics in a game are unable to be copyrighted. So 2 years ago, in 2014, the creators of Bang, which is an amazing card game, if you haven't played it, play it. I'm serious. It's about a Western.
Aaron, please.
Aaron, come on, Aaron.
Who's not a big fan of Bang?
She's a Bang fan. And all right, so Bang with an exclamation mark is a great game. And there was another game that was called Legends of the Three Kingdoms. Basically, Legends of the Three Kingdoms, the game itself, apart from different artwork, is literally a copy and paste of the game Bang. And so, Aaron, I'm just setting you up, ain't I? I'm just setting you up. Seriously, it's about shooting people in the Wild West. You have guns and everything. So the creators figured they could stop them under copyright law. However, unfortunately, due to how a copyright law is worded, the art of a game can be copyrighted, but the mechanisms within it can't be. As quoted from the case, and I know this gets a little lawyer, but bear with me here. In no case does copyright protection for an original work of authorship extend to any idea, procedure, process, system, method of operation, concept, principle, or discovery, regardless of the form in which it is described, explained, illustrated, or embodied in such work. What this means, how we're going to run this back to Magic, is there was a lawsuit that we talked about pretty extensively. It was called Hex. There's this game called Hex.
There still is a game.
There still is
called
one,
Hex.
and
that everybody's playing now.
Jeff Hoagland and Chris Van Meter have been making content for it, and it's basically complicated Magic. We've already talked about it. If you like Magic, you like complicated Magic, you're gonna love Hex. But the point is, Hex copied Magic so badly that Hasbro went after them with their lawyers, and Hasbro's got a serious legal team. They're not like some little dilly-dally, wishy-washy, I'm thinking that whoever the legal team was for the people who represented Bang in this case, are not the legal team that Hasbro corporate has, because what it basically just said, to be clear, is I could copy and paste and make like Evanopoly. And it is literally just the board with different Evan names, and I'll give you Evan Bucks from the Evan Bank, and I can make that a product and sell it to the world, because all I'm using is my own copyrighted artwork and stuff, and not your copyrighted artwork and
that's right.
And images. That is insane. That also means that, remember, Hex ended in an out-of-court settlement. You know why? Because Hex was sure they were going to lose. They were going to get their butts kicked. And here is what happens in a example case that, again, could be appealed, can get overturned. I certainly expect it to get overturned. But Hex took an out-of-court settlement. No one knows the exact... obviously no one outside the parties knows the exact details. My guess is that through the language they had, that Hex is paying some amount of license fees to Wizards for existing. But regardless... this lawsuit basically kind of negated that one. This ruling says that Hex did nothing wrong, and even though they copied all of these spells, all of these things, they're not liable. And so all of a sudden, instead of the board game Ticket to Ride, it's going to be Ticket to Ride on a subway.
I'm
which
not
point
a law scientist. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just a simple caveman, non-lawyer. But there's a difference. So Magic has patents as opposed to copyrights, which are also different from trademarks. I don't know exactly where any of this falls into place, but I think that Magic is slightly different than what is being talked about in this exact situation. And I would almost certainly bet that Hasbro corporate put a bigger lockdown on future anything that could happen than Bang did. I also think that, if you ever look at a booster pack of Magic cards, on the back it says that this symbol is copyrighted and or trademarked, this symbol is trademarked, this symbol is trademarked, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So many of those pieces are protected that even if you made something that was very similar, like Hex, to just barely skirt the issue, I still think that a company as big as Hasbro is going to find a way to needle pick and figure out a way to get at it. So specifically for Magic, I don't think this is as big a problem. It is interesting, and I also agree that it's probably going to, if not get overturned, it's going to be looked at by some other court. This is not the last we're going to hear about this case. But it is a big step in the wrong direction if you're Magic the Gathering corporate.
It's interesting in that, basically, even if this gets overturned, it's going to be in the courts for a long time. None of this stuff moves quickly. If there are companies that come out and, and based on some of what the chat has said, that there is people who have copied Monopoly with different words and names, and for all I know, that's had no problem because of this, but who knows? Regardless, this to me could mean larger things. Maybe it means nothing. I don't know. I ain't a law scientist. All I know is I read that and I went, wait a minute. Yeah. That means I can carbon copy anything, change the artwork, and all of a sudden I can sell a new game with the exact same mechanics as the old one? That seems ridiculous.
If that young man, if Maxime is in the chat watching, you need to Photoshop an Evanopoly, because that would be hilarious. You know how the man is popping out of the O with the money? Yeah, that needs to be Evan Irwin. That needs to be...
I love it. Aaron, you're a genius, Aaron.
It's the hair. And also, I just have to say that I would hate to lose a case in Bang Court.
Bang Court.
God, you've been waiting on that one, right? You've been sitting on that one. You're like, oh man,
not good.
I don't want to move the losing course in Bancourt. And then I'm just like talking and talking. You're like, shut up, Evan. I can't lose the course in Bancourt. Just keep moving.
Did you guys hear what I just said or no?
I did not.
No.
Something happened.
Okay. One of my favorite board games ever is a game called Kill Dr. Lucky, which came out something like 15 years ago. But the original board is no longer being printed because it was based on a real house, and the architect sued the board game company that they couldn't use the map or blueprint of the house in the board game, so they had to change the map of the board game. So original copies of Kill Dr. Lucky are like $150, $200.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
But the game is great, and I love it, and the original map is so fun. I wonder if this has any impact on that, for example, because where do blueprints fall on the scale of what can be sued over?
Photoshop
right?
guy, if you're watching, kill Dr. Rubin or kill Dr. Bressler. Do it.
Unbelievable.
Kill Dr.
Do
Bressler, that's pretty good. Because I haven't brought this up, I'm bringing this up now. Remember when we talked about having an opening with our Photoshop selves?
Yeah.
Here it comes. Oh, there we are on screen.
I'm actually just
Ruben
wearing
Rosewater.
the same shirt.
That's right.
Wearing a photo negative of the same shirt.
That's
It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen from the community.
You'll
Having
see
your hair.
Evan
Love it.
Larson. With actual amazing super hair. I used to have hair. I want to let you know. I really did, and it was really.
Yeah, I
awesome.
see the picture.
Yeah, clearly.
I've never seen you with hair.
That was back when he was not Evan Irwin of the Magic Show.
Aw.
Right. I was totally different, dude. I was totally different.
That was Jesse.
That
That was
actually, yeah. That was.
Wow.
That's my first name. We don't talk about it.
I only said it the once.
I know.
I just wanted to
You
say it's a different character.
Wow.
It's just like the dojo. It's a reminder of a simpler time.
You could say that.
You know,
But what we're going to do
you had to
is
buy
we're
shampoo.
going to... I did. I had to wash it and everything.
Now all you have to do is buy the turtle wax.
Now I just pop a quarter off that thing. All right, so we're going to move on to the finisher, which I didn't have set up correctly, so I'm going to fix that right now. Ruben, say words for like 4 seconds.
Evan, you know what happens when you don't read the finisher ahead of time. It's not good. It's like, this is just going to be...
It's going to be great, is what it's going to be.
I don't know.
All right.
The setup to this joke is way funnier than any of the punchlines I wrote, but we're going to give it a shot.
Here we go. So the finisher this week, ladies and gentlemen. 6 days ago, RoboRosewater created perhaps the greatest name of any Magic card ever created, Niv-Mizzet Vampire Cops. With the Magic movie fast approaching and the Magic creative universe needing more content, give me your pitch for the next episode of Niv-Mizzet Vampire Cops. Aaron?
Okay. On the series premiere episode of Niv-Mizzet Vampire Cops, the team is tracking down a master burglar who can seemingly break into any house with ease, but manages to trap him in the act by building an unbreakable door in the case of the Sherlock Holmes.
Wow. Ruben?
Well played. This weekend.
On a very special episode of Niv-Mizzet Vampire Cops, the team is on the hunt for a mystery of how 2 roommates died via steamroller in the case of the flatmates.
On the 2-part season finale of Niv-Mizzet Vampire Cops, the Vampire Cops finally team up with Niv-Mizzet to hunt down the greatest thief in the multiverse, Dak Faden, who is teamed up with Thassa, God of the Sea, in the case of the Merfolk Looter.
Oh.
Wow, they got an oh. And that, my friends,
Like the
listeners, viewers,
There's one more thing. You have to remind people that Ruben and I are going to be in Columbus this weekend, and come say hi. We'll have swag.
I think you just did. Did you just not?
You'll have swag. I'll avoid everyone.
Right. Y'all will have. You guys will have.
Oh,
You got me. Y'all got me in the y'all because I'm getting all southern this week.
You'll
Y'all
be there
would be
this year.
singular. It's all y'all.
All y'all will be having the stickers and the magnets with you guys at Grand Prix Columbus. go say hello and let them know that you watched the show and whatnot. All of those who have supported us on Patreon and have given me addresses, I have sent your stuff. Your stuff is in the mail. You will receive it shortly. For those overseas, I got nothing. It's probably going to be there in a week or two because, you just kind of cross your fingers and throw it on a boat, and at some point it shows up.
Right. Hashtag swag.
That's right. Hashtag sweet swag. However, we do appreciate all our Patreon supporters who are very close to cracking that water bottles action at the $700 level. We're getting real.
What level is that? I got
$700. We're at $640.
No. What's the name? What's the name of the level?
The name of that level is
I don't know my notes.
coming up right now, which is called the Salt Your Own Fries level.
There it is. Salt your own fries.
The Baywatch level, which is right after that, will be pins and life pads. Can you imagine pins and life pads?
Oh my God.
I can't wait for life to death. I'm
It'll
so
be totally
happy.
sweet. Totally sweet. Well, we're getting super, super close. So thank you guys for supporting us. But I will thank my two co-hosts. Aaron, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Ruben, thank you for joining us as always.
Gracias. From the beginning of the show when we were doing different languages that's a callback. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Wow. Dude, you tried
You
hard.
get called back with that accent? Is that...
Yeah, can you like callbacks?
Sometimes. I mean.
We're going into our final slide. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys very much for joining us. As you do each Wednesday night at 11 o'clock Eastern. I want to thank my co-hosts, you guys, for watching. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com. That exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.
Adios.
Adios. Hey, y'all.
Y'all come back now, you hair.
You heard. Y'all be heard.